Seems like I've got a pretty pressing question from the community on the last video that I did about the iPhone 12 mini delay and whether you should pick the iPhone XR versus the iPhone SE 2. What do you do? Because you're apparently in your country, you're able to get it for the same price. I got some thoughts. Let's go. What is going on, you beautiful humans? Welcome back to the channel. And hey, if you haven't been on planet Earth in the last 24 to 48 hours, then maybe you missed the iPhone 12 event. Probably not, because you have a neighbor, somebody that's into tech, you're on social media, you know what's going on. Or for those of us that were ready and waiting for that event and talking about it on Twitter, yeah, it was quite something. But for those of you that are interested in your budgets, your pocketbooks, your wallets, and in other countries where you can get the XR for the same price as the SE2, but let me actually come back to this really quick. This is the 10. I don't have the XR, but I feel like I can speak to it because as far as the SE2 is concerned and the XR, there are a lot of similarities. And I'm just using this to really kind of show the footprint here and give you some perspective on what I think, because I wasn't sure after the 12s were announced that the XR was still going to be in the lineup, but it seems like Apple is really conscientious as far as the gateway. I think the SE2 is the gateway to get people switching from Android into the iOS ecosystem, or really just having a very decent upgrade. Like maybe you had a really old iPhone, like a 4 or 5, maybe a 6S, which 6S definitely, that was a great phone. But the fact that the SE2 is a great gateway, the XR is as well, because of some of the things as far as the footprint's concerned and the larger display. But let's not talk about the display just yet. Let's actually talk about what I think is probably the most concerning issue that you probably have right now, and that is the battery life. Now, again, just like my last video, this phone has been unplugged for more than 6 hours. And so here, more than 6 hours, I've got, you can grab focus, 1209, more than 6 hours, 74% battery life, Spotify, Nike Run Club, some YouTube videos, Twitter like crazy, answering some YouTube comments, and I still have a lot of day left. And I have really been putting this through the paces, streaming a couple of shows and streaming still some podcasts and some music and trying to get it to the end of the day. And typically I've been getting somewhere between 10 to 15% battery life left when I plug it in at the end of the day, and sometimes between 10, 11 at night. And that might seem ridiculous, but I do put my phone down. So it's not like it's constantly on me, but I am taking phone calls, texts, Twitter like crazy, and doing some streaming, and it's fine. So I haven't had to plug it in at all. Now, for those of you who are not near a plug, or you don't want to have to be near a plug or some sort of power source, you're out and about, you're on your phone a ton, or you're streaming, doing a lot with the phone, and you're concerned about that roughly 1800 milliamp hour battery, and the fact that the XR comes with 1,000 more milliamp hours and it's going to get you more longevity throughout the day, I think that that is a viable concern. And so I think if you can get this phone, the XR, for the same as the SE2, I don't think you're going to be sacrificing much. And what I mean by that is that you're going to get more battery life and a bigger screen if you are cool with a bigger screen. And let's actually talk about that at 6.1 inches versus 4.7 inches. And you know, the XR, it's a more modern look. And you know, obviously the SE2 is sort of a reheated leftovers of the iPhone 8. However, I love the smaller footprint. I really do. And so I think for those of you who are concerned about whether you might drop the phone, or you just, you know, your pockets, or, you know, putting it in places that you need a smaller footprint, the SE2 would be great as long as the battery life is not an issue for you. However, for the XR, I really don't think that you can go wrong with it, because when we talk about the cameras, let's actually talk about the cameras. I mean, I'm a filmmaker. I love photos. And so you're really getting the same camera with a caveat here. So it's got the A12 processor in it. So the A12 chipset in the XR versus the A13. Now you might say, but what does that do for the camera? It's not the camera. However, what I can tell you is that the chipset does have an impact on the camera. Same thing like This camera, this camera, the A6500, the Sony A6500 has the same sensor as the 6400 that I'm filming on, but there's a different chipset in it. It's just how it kind of manages the sensor itself. There's a couple of little advantages that it has. And so what I can tell you is that I noticed these slight differences. However, with the XR versus the SE2, I really don't think you're gonna be noticing those differences. The biggest thing is that they can both film at 4K, you're getting 1080p. However, the SE2 has better stabilization, or able to stabilize at 4K, versus with the XR, you're gonna get that stabilization only at 1080p. And then of course, moving over, if Face ID is important to you, then obviously the XR is the way to go versus the Touch ID on the SE2. And I have to say that I love the Touch ID. I really was kind of speculating and wondering if Apple was going to do Touch ID and the power button like they did for the iPad Air 4. You know, bummer, but hey, it's definitely to come. And the wireless charging capability in both of these phones, like I said, if battery life is something of a concern, but you like the Touch ID, you like the smaller footprint, and you have a wireless charger, just something that you sit down on the wireless charger for, you know, a few minutes just to get a little bit of a bump, maybe that could solve your problem. It's just a thought, but again, you have that option in both of these phones. And I really think for the price, especially if you can get it for the same price, I really wouldn't worry too much about the A12 versus the A13, because I still think if you want to be into gaming and to filmmaking, photography, I think that the chipset is going to be just fine. It's definitely going to be supported for years. So if you like the larger screen, want the guarantee of a heck of a bigger battery than what's in the SE2, I don't think you're gonna go wrong. I really don't. And the fact that Apple has left it in the lineup to give you choice. And like I said, this is really for those of you that are thinking about SE2 versus XR. We're not talking about the 11 or the 12. Those will happen in subsequent videos, so stay tuned for those. But I just wanted to take an opportunity to answer those questions. So really, my take is if you want the Face ID, bigger footprint, so bigger screen, a little bit more modern style, modern look, and the battery life, go for the XR. Otherwise, I think the SE2 is a monster of a phone at the smallest footprint that I can appreciate, but that's just me. What are your questions, comments? Hit me up below. You know I'm always around. Hit me up on Twitter as well. I'm also over there quite a bit. You go out there and do those things that matter. Keep rocking the faces. I will keep creating for you here, and until next time, I will catch you right back here on the next one.